Good afternoon, Lions Nation. I hope you're all doing well on this Wednesday because the latest discussion surrounding Jahmyr Gibbs has created a lot of noise around the Detroit Lions. But when you look closely at the situation, there is far less drama than some people are trying to create. Over the last few days, speculation has continued to spread about whether the Lions will be able to pay Gibbs, whether contract concerns could become an issue, and whether Detroit might face difficult financial decisions in the near future. But from everything being discussed around the organization, there appears to be a very clear belief that Gibbs is a major part of the franchise's future. The biggest point that keeps coming up is simple. The Lions want Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit for the long term. There have been repeated discussions emphasizing that Detroit fully understands the value of one of the most explosive offensive weapons in football. Gibbs is still playing under his rookie contract, which means there is no immediate urgency or holdout situation hanging over the organization. Despite some of the speculation circulating among analysts and fans, the expectation remains that the Lions will eventually reward him with a significant extension. And honestly, when you watch what Gibbs brings to this offense, it's not difficult to understand why Detroit views him as a priority. Every time he touches the football, there is a legitimate chance that he can change the game. His acceleration is rare. His ability to go from a complete stop to top speed in just a couple of steps creates problems for every defense he faces. Defenders can have perfect angles and still find themselves chasing him from behind. One cut, one juke, one missed tackle, and suddenly a routine play becomes a touchdown. That kind of talent is not easy to replace. What makes the conversation even more interesting is that the Lions appear ready to place an even larger workload on Gibbs moving forward. For years, Detroit benefited from having one of the NFL's best running back tandems. The combination of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery gave defenses completely different problems to solve. One back could punish opponents with physical running, while the other could attack with elite explosiveness. But things are changing. The expectation now is that this offense will become increasingly centered around Gibbs. Instead of an even split in carries, Detroit appears ready to feature him as the primary engine of the rushing attack. That is a major vote of confidence from the coaching staff and reflects how highly they view his overall skill set. When coaches begin talking about a player becoming the focal point of an offense, that tells you everything you need to know about how important that player is to the future plans of the organization. And that naturally leads to another major topic surrounding the Lions right now. Can Jared Goff lead this team all the way to a Super Bowl? It feels like this question never disappears. No matter how much success Goff has had in Detroit, there always seems to be another debate about whether he is truly the quarterback who can bring a championship to the city. Yet when you step back and evaluate what he has accomplished since arriving in Detroit, the results speak for themselves. The Lions know exactly what they have in Jared Goff. This is not a mystery anymore. He is a pocket passer who operates best when protected by a strong offensive line. He is not going to beat defenses with his legs. He is not going to scramble all over the field, creating off-script highlights every week. Instead, he wins by reading defenses, making quick decisions, and delivering accurate throws to his playmakers. And Detroit has built its roster around those strengths. The organization has invested heavily in the offensive line. They have surrounded Goff with talented skill position players. They have built an offensive system designed to maximize what he does best. That is why the constant criticism feels strange to many Lions fans. If the front office truly believed Goff was not capable of leading this team, they would not have committed significant resources to him. The coaching staff would not continue building around him. The organization would already be searching aggressively for alternatives. Instead, everything suggests confidence. The strongest argument in Goff's favor may be what the Lions have already achieved. Detroit came remarkably close to reaching the Super Bowl not long ago. The margin between playing in the biggest game of the year and falling short was incredibly small. A few plays, a few catches, a few moments that went the other way, and the conversation around Goff might look completely different today. That reality cannot be ignored. Sometimes the difference between being labeled a championship quarterback and being questioned endlessly comes down to a handful of plays. As the Lions move closer to training camp, expectations continue to rise. The roster remains loaded with talent. The offense has game-changing players. The defense continues to develop. The organization believes it can compete with anybody in the league. And at the center of it all are two players who continue generating headlines for very different reasons. Jahmyr Gibbs, who looks destined to become one of the highest-paid running backs in football someday, and Jared Goff, who continues carrying the responsibility of proving he can lead Detroit to the ultimate prize. The fascinating part is that both stories are connected. If Gibbs becomes the centerpiece of the offense, and Goff continues operating efficiently within one of the NFL's most talented supporting casts, the Lions could once again find themselves among the league's elite contenders. But that raises the biggest question heading into the next stage of the offseason. If you had to choose one player who will have the biggest impact on Detroit's Super Bowl chances this season, would you pick Jahmyr Gibbs or Jared Goff, and why? The conversation about Detroit's championship window becomes even more interesting when you start looking beyond the stars and examine the overall identity this team has built over the last several years. One of the reasons expectations remain so high is because the Lions are no longer viewed as a feel-good story. They are no longer the team that people simply root for because they have struggled historically. Detroit has reached a point where the rest of the NFL expects them to compete for championships. That is a completely different level of pressure. When a team is rebuilding, fans celebrate progress. When a team becomes a contender, fans demand results. The Lions have entered that second category. Part of the reason for that shift is the amount of talent spread throughout the roster. It is not just Gibbs. It is not just Goff. It is the collection of players that Detroit has assembled. Across the league, many of these names have become recognizable even outside the Lions fan base. Amon-Ra St. Brown continues to grow as one of the most respected receivers in football. His popularity extends far beyond Detroit. His work ethic, consistency, and production have made him one of the faces of the franchise. Every season, he seems to find another level, and opponents know exactly how difficult it is to slow him down. Then there is Penei Sewell, who has become one of the premier offensive linemen in the NFL. While offensive linemen do not always receive the same attention as quarterbacks or skill players, people around the league recognize just how dominant Sewell has become. His presence is one of the major reasons Detroit's offense has been able to operate at such a high level. And of course, Aiden Hutchinson remains one of the biggest defensive stars associated with the franchise. His energy, leadership, and ability to impact games have made him one of the most recognizable players on the roster. Even fans from other teams pay attention whenever Hutchinson takes the field. When you combine all of these personalities with players like Gibbs and Goff, it becomes easier to understand why the Lions have become one of the NFL's most popular teams. The support extends far beyond Michigan. Many football fans see Detroit as the ultimate underdog success story. For decades, the franchise struggled to find consistent success. Now they have transformed themselves into one of the league's most respected organizations. That kind of turnaround naturally attracts attention from neutral fans who enjoy seeing long-suffering franchises finally become contenders. The popularity of the team also reflects the culture that has been built inside the organization. That culture starts with Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes. What makes their partnership so fascinating is that many people questioned it from the beginning. When Campbell was hired, there were countless doubts about whether he could succeed as a head coach. Critics focused on his personality. They questioned his approach. They wondered whether the energy and emotion he displayed would translate into victories. Now, years later, those doubts look very different. Campbell has helped create one of the strongest cultures in football. Players buy into his message. Veterans embrace the environment. Young players develop within the system. Most importantly, the team wins football games. Brad Holmes deserves enormous credit as well. The Lions' rise has not happened by accident. Successful drafting, smart roster construction, and patience throughout the rebuilding process have all played major roles in where Detroit stands today. Building a contender requires far more than simply acquiring talented players. It requires finding players who fit the culture, understand the vision, and contribute to long-term success. The Lions have done exactly that. Interestingly, when people discuss the current leadership group, it often creates comparisons to previous eras in Detroit. Not every coaching hire worked. Not every front office decision produced positive results. Lions fans remember difficult periods when expectations quickly turned into disappointment. That is why the current situation feels so significant. The organization appears aligned from top to bottom. Ownership, management, coaching staff, and players all seem committed to the same vision. That level of organizational stability is often one of the biggest indicators of long-term success in professional sports. Another moment that recently drew attention involved Darius Slay. For longtime Lions fans, Slay represents an important important chapter in franchise history. Many remember watching him arrive in Detroit as a young player before eventually developing into one of the NFL's premier cornerbacks. His journey included tremendous success, difficult transitions, and ultimately a Super Bowl championship during his career. Seeing him celebrated and recognized serves as a reminder of how far the franchise has come over the years. Many players who passed through Detroit during previous eras never had the opportunity to experience the kind of winning culture that currently exists. Today's roster benefits from a foundation that has been carefully built over time, and that foundation is one of the reasons expectations continue to rise heading into another crucial season. The biggest challenge now is simple. Can the Lions take the final step? They have proven they can win games. They have proven they can reach the playoffs. They have proven they can compete with the best teams in football, but championships are different. The margin between a great season and a historic season is often incredibly small. One play, one drive, one quarter, or one game can determine how an entire year is remembered. That is why every development involving Gibbs, Goff, Campbell, Holmes, and the rest of the roster feels magnified. The Lions are no longer chasing respect. They already have it. They are chasing something much bigger now, a Super Bowl. And that is exactly why every move, every contract discussion, every roster decision, and every performance during the upcoming season will be analyzed more closely than ever before. One aspect that should not be overlooked as Detroit moves closer to the season is how much confidence the organization appears to have in its offensive direction. There is a growing belief that the Lions are not simply trying to repeat what worked in previous years. Instead, they seem prepared to evolve. That is where the discussion about Jahmyr Gibbs becomes even more important. When coaches begin talking about building more of the offense around a player, it is not just praise. It is a statement about future plans. The Lions know exactly what type of weapon they have in Gibbs, and there is a strong argument that we have not even seen his full potential yet. Think about it for a moment. Despite already producing explosive plays on a regular basis, Gibbs spent much of his early Lions career sharing responsibilities in the backfield. The offense benefited from having multiple runners, but now there appears to be a real opportunity for Gibbs to take on an even larger role. That possibility should excite every Lions fan. Defensive coordinators already spend countless hours trying to figure out how to contain him. Imagine the challenge if his workload increases significantly while he continues developing as both a runner and receiver. The scary part for opponents is that Gibbs is not a one-dimensional player.